them back in, told them to continue deliberating. They came back, said, we'd like to go home for the day. They were sent home for the day. They will continue deliberating. So as of right now, unless something should change tomorrow, we may have a partial verdict. We may have a verdict as to 4 of the 5 charges. I have given my predictions. All of my panelists have given their predictions about what this means. So far, nobody we've spoken to has said that he's going to be acquitted of everything else. Look, but Bradford said it best. We could all be wrong. We have no idea. I mean, I'm reading the tea leaves, reading what's been going on. I gave my 2 cents about what I think it is. Again, I think that he might be convicted of the transportation to engage in prostitution charges, sex trafficking of Cassie, probably not guilty of Jane. Sierra, but I'm going back to you on this because we have so many different questions about this. The readback of testimony today, when the jury asked about the 2016 incident, the LA Continental Hotel incident, when they asked about the Cannes Film Festival, the flight, right? I think that was a crucial point. When they asked about Daniel Phillips' testimony, this male performer, why is that significant? For our viewers who don't know, why are those 3 incidents so significant?
I think they're so important because it kind of tells us what we now know a bit more about, right? The fact that there is this question mark for count number 1, the racketeering conspiracy. We now know, okay, they couldn't decide. There's kind of a split right there, a hung jury at the moment about that one. It sounds like we'll see what happens more tomorrow. But earlier in the day, before we heard anything about these potential verdicts for the rest of everything, we had this question. Hey, can we have the transcripts with Cassie's testimony, with the testimony from Daniel Phillips? And now we kind of know that this goes back to count 1, the racketeering conspiracy, the RICO. And I think it just goes to show once again how confusing all of the predicate crimes could be. We've talked about these ad nauseum simply because they're so confusing and there's so much to go through here. And it seems to me that the jurors were trying to do that, parse through and say, okay, did this have to go to forced labor? Did this have to go to arson? I mean, what was it as far as all of the predicate crimes? And specifically with those incidents, we're talking about the Intercontinental Hotel, we're talking about the Cannes Film Festival, the domestic violence situations that are going on there, very apparent, number 1. And then number 2, when we're talking about Daniel Phillips' testimony, that could be going toward sex trafficking, because of course his testimony is really important in regards to the alleged sex trafficking of Cassie Ventura. So I think it's really important. It shows kind of what direction the jury is going, at least in all of that. But who's to say? I mean, they're not agreeing on things as of right now about count number 1, which is really stunning.
Yep. Sierra, I know you have to sign off. Great reporting all day. Great hosting all day. Lucky to have you. Thank you so much. Hopefully nobody else honks as you're walking away. Who's going to honk Sierra Gillespie? Come on. We live in a society, people. This is a place of adults. Please. I know. All right, Sierra.
Thank you so much, Jesse. We'll talk soon.
Talk soon. All right. By the way, we're working on getting Elizabeth Milner up. I know everybody loves Elizabeth, right? Queen Elizabeth is coming out. She's probably in that courtroom made of questions, so we'll work on getting Elizabeth up. If you have questions for Elizabeth, shoot them over. We'll make sure to answer them. Safa, let me go back to you. We have more questions coming in. First of all, some really nice comments. A. Brock, greetings from Poland. Long crime crew, you're amazing. That's so kind. Thank you so much. Erica Charlotte, I watch every day too from Southeast London. So kind. Thank you so much. Sherilyn Amburn asks, what reason could the prosecution possibly have for not putting KK on the stand? Christina Coram. Let me ask you this. So, Safa, you can ask what would be the reason to not put KK on the stand, and part B, if he is acquitted or there is a hung jury as to racketeering conspiracy, will the prosecution be kicking themselves for not bringing her on?
They might be kicking themselves for it. You know, I can't say exactly why they didn't call her as a witness on the stand to testify. Certainly, if I was on the prosecution team, I would want to call her as a witness to testify, particularly because I think she lacks in that criminal enterprise component that people would ideally be looking for with respect to the RICO charge. You know, she could have been just a really bad witness for the prosecution, or they may have thought that she would have been a really bad witness for them, considering her alleged participation in these acts, you know, whether or not she was going to be truthful, whether or not she was going to come off as a likable and honest witness to the potential jurors. So I don't know why they didn't call her. It could just be something strategic. You know, She could have been a part of the initial investigation, a part of, what ultimately ended up in the search warrant application to go into Mr. Combs' home by the Department of Homeland Security. We don't know, and I don't know that she's testified in grand jury. I didn't have any information that led me to believe, and I could be wrong. But I don't know why they didn't call her. I would have certainly called her, but she could just be, a bad witness that they were worried about the jury considering her when she was to go testify, if she were to have testified in the trial.
By the way, we put up some polls.
Inside baseball?
Yeah,
Who wants
please.
inside baseball, raise their hand.
I know I do, especially
Okay.
from Bradford Cohen, Professor Cohen.
So here's the deal. They didn't call KK because she was not going to be helpful to them. They spoke with several witnesses. Several witnesses called my office, in fact. I'm not going to disclose any kind of information that they gave me, but I can tell you that their testimony was not helpful to the government. And once the government found that out, the government decided not to use them. So the government spoke to tens and tens of witnesses, and I just so happened, I don't know why, maybe I'm a witness magnet, but a lot of witnesses called my office in terms of representation. Obviously, there was some representation that I could not take on because of conflicts, but I can tell you that a lot of the witnesses that I spoke to were not helpful for the government, and therefore they were never called by the government. Although they spoke to the government, although they gave statements to the government decided not to use them because they were not going to be helpful to their case. In fact, they were probably going to hurt their case more than help them. Now, why didn't the defense use them? Because it's a double-edged sword. Some of the things that they were going to say were not necessarily helpful to the defense. So It's one of those things that you're stuck as a defense attorney. Do you really want to put on that individual witness? Is the juice is the juice worth the squeeze, as they say? And in this case, the juice was not worth the squeeze. I think the defense put on a very nice case in terms of cross-examination of the witnesses, in terms of the individual texts that they brought up, in terms of the receipts that they had, in terms of the Instagram posts that they had.
Yeah.
All those things, while not putting on, quote unquote, a case, that is the case that they put on, and I think they were very effective.
Bradford, I think you're 100% right in the sense that she might have been not the link they needed to establish there was a criminal enterprise, that there was a criminal agreement. Her testimony might have really hurt that idea. But like you said, maybe she helps with drug offenses. Maybe she helps with bribery, and there are going to be components of that case. We don't want to concede that. So I agree. Okay, we have with us Elizabeth Milner, who is inside the courthouse. Queen Elizabeth is with us. Elizabeth, good to see you. Thank you so much for coming out. I'm just going to ask you straight up. We got this question that came out from Elizabeth. This is from Enlin DK. What was the overall vibe in the room? And also, this is from Doug K788. How did the jury look when they came into the room? How did they look at Diddy? So what was the vibe? How did everyone look?
Yeah, as far as the tone and the atmosphere inside that courtroom, Jesse, it was so quiet. I would say you could hear a pin drop, but really all you could hear were the sounds of the court sketch artist really just kind of drawing her painting. Because I remember coming in, and normally I come in around like 4:15-ish because I was thinking, okay, it's the end of the day. Their jury's probably going to want to go home around 5. But then there was this tone, this feeling inside. The defense was all huddled together. You saw Ana Maria Esteval's arm kind of around Tenny, Sean Cole. Always hesitant to say that he looks defeated or he looks worried or he looks nervous. But this time was different, Jesse. I think once that jury note came down, once he saw that actual note about, because he got the clues before we got the clues as far as they reached a verdict on count 2, 3, 4, and 5. I think there was kind of a moment of nervousness. I felt like you could feel the weight on his shoulder. And then at first I was thinking, oh my God, if they're about to read a verdict, where is his entire family? And then I saw his family members, some that we haven't seen this morning inside the courtroom, start to kind of trickle in. That included all of his sons. That included his daughters too. And that included also Dana Tran, man. It included his mother, Janice. It included his sister, Keisha. It included his brother-in-law, too. So it was a pretty packed courtroom. I was thinking at a point that they would just read the verdict. I didn't know what was going to be going on. Obviously, they did not read the verdict. None of that had happened. But really, you could feel just the tense atmosphere to the point a lot of us in the press obviously are going to be looking at Sean Combs, looking at his movement, looking at his demeanor. But because the defense huddled so close around him, likely to kind of prevent us from seeing what his demeanor looked like and for us to write it down, those types of things, it really was a tight circle. So it really was kind of a tense atmosphere. And obviously, when the judge got back on the bench and he said that the jury came back that they said that they reached a verdict on count 2, 3, 4, and 5, but they're still kind of not been able to reach a verdict as to count 1. I think a lot of us were just like, oh my God, it's happening. Obviously, the verdict wasn't read. They're going to come back tomorrow, continue deliberating, but you could feel the weight of the world, especially on the defendant, but also the Combs family. But I will say, Jesse, when they brought the jury in, because they brought them in twice, one to kind of read them, I guess, that modified Allen charge about continuing to deliberate, and then the second time to release them by the end of the day, I will say I did kind of note that they weren't looking in the defendant's direction. I think a lot of them were making their way all the way to their seat, didn't know what the next process would be because, again, they're jurors. They don't know what's going to be happening. They didn't know if they were going to be told to continue deliberating tonight, if they could have the option to come back tomorrow. Obviously, the judge gave them the option to come back tomorrow, but even when they were exiting the courtroom, from what I could see, I couldn't see them necessarily looking at the defendant, but if it was vice versa, I did see the defendant looking at the jurors. So, maybe some people kind of did like a little peripheral eye glance look or anything like that. From what I could see, they didn't look in his direction. So we'll see what tomorrow brings as far as what their possible decision might end up being and the outcome.
Let me ask you this. This modified Allen charge that the judge gave to the jury, what exactly did he tell them? Did he say, go back deliberating? It's different, and it's modified because I think they were trying to stay consistent with what the actual jury instructions were. What exactly did Judge Arun Subramanian tell them?
Well, he told them to keep on deliberating. He said that each and every single one of you must decide the case for himself or for herself, and that no juror should pretty much like waver on their opinions in terms of if they feel some type of way, that they should feel that type of way, and it's okay for them to feel that type of way. But in terms of just even what's going to be happening next is the jury will come back, everyone, and they'll deliberate a little bit, and then and then they'll continue on whether or not they need to bring in more specified instructions. But from the defense's perspective, they were pretty adamant that they think it's too early for them to come back with any type of split verdict or anything like that. They were very adamant that they wanted the jury to continue deliberating, but also not give them such a specific instruction in terms of when to come back, whether or not they want to continue on with court on Thursday, or if they want to have a decision made, those types of things. They really were just adamant, just let the jury continue deliberating from their perspective, because it's been weeks of testimony, because there's been so much evidence, because there's been so many witnesses. They being the defense were like, okay, we want them to continue deliberating, but we'll see what happens. I keep saying we'll see what happens tomorrow because I felt like we could see what happens today, but yeah, it seems like we're very, very close, especially since they reached a decision on 2, 3, 4, and 5.
We got a commenter, Smarty Pants. We're getting a full verdict by 12 p.m. tomorrow, if not sooner. It's obvious. What a question from Smarty Pants. I mean, I can't make this up. We got another user who was like, the account was confused and had a question about this. I'm just reading the accounts and the questions. It's amazing. Okay, this is an important question because Elizabeth, I don't know if you saw my analysis. I basically think that the jury has found him guilty on the transportation to engage in prostitution charges, sex trafficking of Cassie, probably not guilty of Jane. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons I think that they probably have found him guilty of Cassie sex trafficking were because of the questions that they asked today. And how quickly from those questions they came back with a verdict, because this is from a NACE TM. Elizabeth, were the people wrong question. This is from Danny. Elizabeth, in regards to the jury's questions, does the questions favor the defense or the prosecution? So I believe they favored the prosecution, but what do you think?
I agree with you, Jesse. I definitely think they favor the prosecution only because of the specific instances that they pointed out. Cassie at the Intercontinental Hotel, Cassie at the Cannes Film Festival, and the events that immediately followed that. Cassie and her interactions with Daniel Phillip at the freak off at her apartment. And I say these are specific and that they favor the prosecution because these were the exact same instances that the prosecution talked about in their closing argument. You know, I told you during our lunchtime hit that, I was thinking that, okay, they really were listening closely to those closing arguments because they pointed out these specific events, and even an extra one, that being Daniel Phillips' testimony in regard to what had happened at the Essex Hotel. But I think given that they didn't have any types of questions pertaining to Jane or anything like that, I kind of agree with you. It seems like they might be kind of leaning towards guilty on count 2. But again, everyone, that the charge hasn't been read, a verdict hasn't been reached, none of that. But it seems like from their specific and very pointed questions that they might possibly be favoring the prosecution for sure.
This is a question from an Ace TM. Elizabeth, were the people testifying during the trial in the courtroom? How did they react to counts 2 through 5 being decided?
Yeah, so the people who testified in the courtroom, I did not see them inside the courtroom. The only person I think notably that was inside the courtroom was Doug Wigder. And we know Doug Wigder because he is Cassandra Ventura's fines attorney. And so he seems pretty interested knowing that counts 2, 3, 4, and 5, they've reached a decision on that. But I think, given his demeanor that I saw inside the courtroom, I think it's possibly in favor of his client. But as in terms of the other witnesses, we didn't see Jane, or we didn't see Mia, we didn't see Bonna, we didn't see Cassie Ventura, we didn't see Deontay, we didn't see a number of the witnesses, maybe outside of the paralegals, or I don't think I saw Special Agent Joseph Cerciello either. But, who knows, for the big verdicts, for the big V, they might actually come down into the courtroom, but we don't know that just yet.
Yeah, we had a question from Alana Rodriguez, 896. Hi, Queen Elizabeth. Looking great today. You too, Jesse. Love the hair. So kind. Elizabeth, did they come to a verdict on the last one yet? So I think that if anybody's just joining us, did they come to a verdict on the last one yet, Elizabeth?
All right, everyone, if you guys are just joining us, they've only reached a verdict on count 2, 3, 4, and 5. So they're still kind of holed up on count 1. Obviously, count 1 being racketeering conspiracy. As far as count 2, that's sex trafficking as it pertains to Cassie. Count 3 being transportation to engage in prostitution as it pertains to Cassie. Count 4 being sex trafficking as it pertains to Jane. Count 5 being transportation to... You guys, I'm saying this out loud, and this shows how much I'm involved in this case, that I can read off all the different counts just from my mind. I'm not even looking at the superseding indictment. That shows how involved I've been in this case. But just to answer your question, everyone, count 5 being transportation to engage in prostitution. And there weren't really there weren't any questions regarding that. So it seems like it's possible that it might be in the government's favor.
Really interesting super chat comment. Thank you so much from Forrest and Fawn, which I said earlier today when I was doing the lunch show. Amazing name. It's like the name of like a cookie brand, right? Forrest and Fawn. Anyway. A super chat question. I absolutely cannot go away this holiday weekend thinking of Diddy. Hurry up. Well, we shall see. Elizabeth Milner, you are going to be there tomorrow. You might be there for the verdict, partial verdict, complete verdict, but you're going to be there tomorrow. Thank you so much. Great reporting as always.
Thanks, Jesse.
All right, I want to bring back in Safa and Bradford. Safa, you think we're getting a verdict tomorrow? You think we're getting a verdict on racketeering before the holiday weekend?
I definitely think we're getting a verdict tomorrow, and particularly before the holiday weekend. This is the 4th of July weekend. These jurors have been sitting on this case for quite some time. They want to go home. They want to be done with this. So I do expect that we're going to get a verdict tomorrow.
And Bradford, you don't see let me ask you a question. We got a question about this Allen charge. In your experience, do they give multiple Allen charges or modified Allen charges? If they come back and say, hey, listen, we still can't come to a decision, does the judge say, hey, go back one more time? Or is that overly suggestive? Do you think that after being told to go back to deliberate, they are going to still be at an impasse? Or do you think they'll eventually come to a verdict?
I think they're still going to be in an impasse just because it feels like there are more than one juror on that charge that is saying either guilty or not guilty. So, like I said, often, if there's one holdout, usually they get beat up enough. I mean, I just had a trial in San Francisco, a murder case in San Francisco, where there was one holdout. And the guy was great. I mean, he held out for like 6 days, very strong guy, 7 days. He would come out, he's crying, he's upset. Everyone was upset. They came back in dozens of times. The foreman came back in and said, this one guy, he's a conspiracy theorist. We can't agree with this guy. And he held out for the 7 days. And right before they came with the verdict, the foreman came back in and said, remember when I said he was a conspiracy theorist? We couldn't agree with him. He's a good guy. We like him now. And then they came back with a guilty verdict on second degree instead of first degree, which is okay. It's never okay to get a guilty verdict, but it was okay in that case. And, that's what happens when you have one holdout. You got people just beating on you every day saying, you're not making any sense. You're not making any sense. You got the 4th of July around the corner. People are saying, I got to pick up my kid. I got to do this. And they're blaming you. And what happens is you have to be such a strong personality. You have to be almost a Superman or Superwoman to withstand those slings and arrows of guilt or not guilt and hold your ground that a decision is not met. Now, when there's 2 or 3, you guys form like a little clan and you're like, you find comfort in each other. So my guess is there's at least 2 or 3 here that are saying either guilty or not guilty, and they're going to find comfort in each other. And my hope is that they stand strong, whatever their verdict is, they stand strong on that verdict. They've heard all the evidence. They've seen everything they need to see. And it's whether or not the others can beat them up enough to say, hey, listen, we all want to go home and let's just do this. But I don't think they come to a verdict on that charge.
Okay, Safa, final question of the night. This is a super chat question from We Will Dance Again. Thank you so much. How much time can he get for the Mann Act guilty verdict? So transportation to engage in prostitution. How much time can he get for that alone?
He's facing up to 10 years on that charge. And so ultimately, if he were to just be convicted of that charge, the judge can sentence him up to 10 years. So he's got the most exposure with the RICO, which that is the crucial charge, the charge that he has the most to lose. But with the Mann Act, he's looking at 10.
And what's a minimum that he might be looking at, if you know?
So there's no minimum, but right now, so he's been in custody for quite some time. Not only that, but we have to look at the sentencing guidelines and where he would fall at with respect to those guidelines. Could the judge give him 5 years? Sure.
Yeah.
8? Sure. Could the judge give him time served? In theory, yes. Will the judge do that? It's up to him.
Safa Robinson-Ferrer, Bradford Cohen, you guys are the best. Thank you so much for coming on, answering the questions in real time with this breaking news. Really appreciate both of you.
Thank you, Jesse.
You got it. Now, here's the thing. Okay, so we're going to be back tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Chris Stewart's going to start off our live coverage for the full day. It might be verdict day. And I'll tell you what, Monica Armenta says tomorrow's my 40th birthday, and I will definitely be watching. I hope the jury can figure it out tomorrow. Definitely a birthday to remember. By the way, we put up a poll. Are you going to tune in for a potential verdict tomorrow? 84% say heck yeah. 15% say nope. And we had JH1984 say, you know them 15% people who voted for not tuning in tomorrow, telling lies. I agree with you. I don't believe them at all. Now, before we wrap things up, again, thank you so much for the tremendous questions, for tuning in. I want to let you know that if you're interested in a little bit more of a deep dive into what has been happening in that Diddy courtroom every day, well, I'll tell you what. The second season of Law and Crime's hit podcast, The Rise and Fall of Diddy, I host it. It is out. It is back. The 3rd episode dropped today. You can have you have all 3 episodes you can catch up on. They're all on Wondery Plus, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. In fact, here is a little bit of a teaser for you. And I'll tell you what, before we sign off, I'm Jesse Weber. I'll see you tomorrow. Check out this. Have a good night, everybody.
We acting bad. We ain't trying to hurt nobody.
For decades, he was untouchable.
I've gone from Harlem to Hollywood.
Sean Diddy Combs built an empire from the ground up. But now, it's all coming undone.
Sean Combs, the mogul as we know it, is over.
I'm Jesse Weber, host of Law and Crime's The Rise and Fall of Diddy, the federal trial, a front row seat to the biggest trial in entertainment history. Sex trafficking, racketeering, prostitution, allegations by federal prosecutors that span decades,
and witnesses who are finally speaking out.
This is at least the 10th lawsuit filed against Combs.
Each week we break down the courtroom drama as it happens.
How far will he fall, or will he walk free, but with a reputation in ruins? You can listen to the rise and fall of Diddy, the federal trial, exclusively on Wondery Plus.
Monday CRM has the best.
With all of our colleagues. We've got a lot of members flying into town. Some went home for the weekend because we didn't know what the Senate schedule would be and what it would yield. They're on the way back.
And look, there's also an attendance